I'm extremely sick and tired of people saying that they don't know what to do. When knowing what to do is the easiest part of our journey, of our path, of our lives. The knowing is easy, the doing is what's hard. If you tell me I'm struggling doing that which I know I must do, then I can have some sympathy for you. But when you come to me and you say I simply don't know what I should do, I I don't know. For a while I've been tackling this expression, this statement by saying you need more time alone, more solitude. But I don't think that's right. I think I'd give people the benefit of the doubt and believe them, but I no longer do. I think we all deep down know what we need to do. And some people know that, and other people lie to themselves and say they don't know that. But the majority of people, the many, they say that they always add a but. They say, I know I need to do this, that, and the other, but, or what do you think you should do? I think I should do this, but. No buts. There's, there's literally, yeah, no buts. There's no reason for it. You're saying you know that you should do this, but you already have the knowledge of the reasons why it's going to be hard, awkward, uncomfortable, so on and so forth, may fail, all these things. But still, you still know you should do this, but you don't. But you allow yourself to come up with all these reasons that this fact is already aware of. And through that, it's you still know it's what you should do, even though you have a whole list of reasons. Yeah, there's going to be a million reasons why it's going to be hard to do the thing you know you must do. There's going to be a million reasons why you shouldn't, why it could fail, why you may regret it. And you probably will. But there's nothing worse than never failing. And there's nothing worse than regretting not doing that which you knew you should do. It's not the end of the world if you fail. Failure is actually a good thing because then you grow. You grow more. And then you can cross that off the box. If you truly are trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, if you're truly trying to figure out the next step, if you're truly a truth seeker, if you just want to become wise, if you just want the best for yourself in this world, then you'll walk this path and it'll be better for you in the world if you fail at what you think you should be doing sooner than later. Because then you can get closer to doing what you actually need to be doing sooner than later. You know, this world is meant to be experienced. There's there's something to be said for the person that, makes a fool of himself time and time again. Because at least he's trying. At least he's, throwing himself out there. At least he's learning through experience. But the person who just walks on eggshells and never tries to make a mistake, to walk this perfect life, which you can really only do if you live off other people's experiences, which to me is foolish. Because then, some people who consider themselves wise will say it's wise to do this. But it makes no sense because if you do it with one person, then in reality, you should do it with everybody. And in reality, if you do it with everybody, then you're not thinking for yourself ever. You're dogmatically accepting what someone else did before you. You're dogmatically allowing the thinking of another person, convincing yourself that the thinking of another person is better than your thinking, that it's all been done, it's all been figured out. You don't need to do anything other than walk the path. And this is one of my problems with religion. I'm a very spiritual person and I believe in God, but I think religion is horrible because all religions are trying to get you to conform to this way of life. And that's why I love Nietzsche so much, because in Thus Spoke Zarathustra is like, yeah, this is the way I've found. This is the way to the mountaintop. But don't follow my path. Learn for yourself. if we're right, if we both come to the same conclusion, then I'll be happy to walk this path with you. But if at some point in the journey you think we should take a right and I think we should take a left, then we go our separate ways. And we're both right. We're both doing what we believe is best. We're both learning from experience and we're both becoming wise through experience, which is the only way you can become wise. Wisdom is not in books. Wisdom is not in anything but yourself and experience and learning and sin and virtue. We can only rise as high as we have fallen. And that's why I have many regrets in my life, but they're really not regrets because all the sins I've committed helped me become a higher being, helped me see the world more clearly. The person who tries to walk the straight and narrow just because it's the straight and narrow, they're not truly wise. They don't truly learn these lessons. And they're like they're on the brink of breaking. There's no sound foundation to them. They have one drink and they see what it's like to be drunk, and they spiral. They're in a whirlwind. I know somebody like that who never did anything and now is the worst of everybody I know. And it's like, that's what happens when you just walk this path. When you try to force somebody, I think he was, for this one example, he was forced into this mold. And instead of learning that that wasn't his mold earlier, sooner than later, he learned it later than sooner. And, I think it's easier to fall when you're a kid because nothing really serious is happening yet. You don't really have the barrel of life isn't really staring you down yet. But when you wait till you're older to make a bunch of mistakes, and then the barrel of life's staring you down, it's so hard, I think. I mean, it must be. It is. It's hard to change your ways because it's so easy just to numb yourself, just to think this is not to confront it all. Once you need to start working 40 hours a week, having all these responsibilities, and then on top of all that, you need to change your ways, become wise, do all these things. It's like unbearable. And it's easier just to numb yourself and just to give into these bad habits from 5 o'clock onward and from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then you just have this small period where you have to endure and hate your life, and you think that's worth it, but it's not. It's better to learn all this when you're younger, as young as possible, which is why I think the autonomy of the youth is the most important thing you can give a child. I think it's best for a child to be completely autonomous without hurting others or himself. And even then, maybe like a little bit of both, because you learn nothing of value if you're not being autonomous. Even if you learn a good lesson, it won't stick. And even if you're walking the right path, it'll feel wrong if you're not being autonomous, if you're not being true to yourself. So, yeah, no more buts. You know what you need to do. It's not rocket scientist, science. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's a walk in the park. I'm not saying it's not the single hardest thing in the known universe. But I am saying you have to do it. And I am saying you know what to do. You know what you need to do. But it's going to be hard. Yes, it's going to be hard. But it's going to be uncomfortable. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. But it's going to be change, uncertainty. Yes, everything. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt. But it's the meaning of life. It's the only thing worth doing. And in the end, you realize that it's the greatest thing. It doesn't suck. It's the best. It's not the worst. It's the greatest. It's still going to be uncomfortable. But when you get to that point in life, when you realize discomfort, when you feel discomfort and you don't back away from it and get scared, and you lean into it and you you think growth instead of discomfort, that's a beautiful place to be in. And that's a place we can all be in. Or at least a few. I don't know if the many is ever going to be able to become that which they are. But there will always be few who overcome, and there will always be few who walk this path. And there will never be just one. There will be few, but you'll never be alone. So never let yourself think that you're alone. Never think you're the only one storming the gates of heaven, trying to become who you are, trying to be seen as beautiful in the eyes of God. You're not the only one. Don't give up on mankind, though. Life's not worth living if you have no hope in mankind. Yeah. So just try to stop saying but. Just leave it at this is what I should do. You don't need to add the but. You don't need to give yourself a scapegoat. You don't need to remind yourself of the fear, of all the reasons it might go wrong, of all the things that you may regret. You don't need to remind yourself of that. All you need to know is what you should do. And what you should do is what you should do. Even if it makes no sense, even if it's irrational. Doing what is right is what is right. And it's better to be wronged than to do wrong. You may be wronged, and you may know you shouldn't be doing this, but it's an eye for an eye. It's not right. It's not right. An eye for an eye was at one point probably crucial to help form society. You had to start somewhere, and saying if you wrong him, you get wronged. That was probably a good thing to say. But we're so much beyond that now, where we don't need to do eye for an eye. We can have a society where a group of people see someone take someone's eye, and they all come in and forgive that person. That's the world that we should be striving to live in, not the world that immediately takes one of his eyes or both of his eyes. It's not the world that we should live in. And you can help create that world. But you have to do what you know is right. And you can't allow buts to stop you. Because, when your time comes, a but's not going to suffice. When you didn't become who you were meant to become, when you didn't live up to your potential, when you didn't do all that you were meant to do, God isn't going to accept your butt. He isn't going to accept your excuse for why it didn't happen. And you shouldn't either. As Marcus Aurelius said, trust that or do the right thing and the rest doesn't matter. The but doesn't matter. The outcome doesn't matter. Nothing matters other than doing the right thing. And is that is different in so many avenues, whether it's, eating healthy, quitting your job, going to the gym, talking to some girl, whatever it may be, talking to some friend about a hard topic, whatever it may be. Sometimes I think when I talk, or even when I think by myself, or maybe we all do this, we hear these lessons of old, we hear these virtuous, wise things, and we think they don't apply to us, but these things apply to the most mundane things. They apply to not overeating at night. They apply to not being keeping your word, They apply to talking to that person that you should go talk to. They apply to so many things. They don't just apply to the 1% of our life. They apply to the 100% of our life, in the mundane, in the trivial. And that's honestly where it comes up most. because that's most of our life. But it becomes profound when you do what you know you should do. Every second becomes profound. Every moment becomes real. Every instance is immortal.